The following program, Live and Learn, is made possible by Aging Partners. Find out more on their website at agingpartners@lincoln.ne.gov.
Valentine's Day is upon us. What better time to have a song in your heart? I'm Kristen Stowe, and today on Live and Learn, we welcome Jerry Worth, member of the Lincoln Continentals, along with 3 other members who are going to be entertaining us with barbershop harmony. Welcome, Jerry.
Thank you for having me this morning.
Absolutely. Could you please tell us about the Lincoln Continentals?
Well, the Lincoln Continentals have been in existence almost 60 years now, and it was formed as a barbershop chorus. So barbershop is the roots of the music that they do, but in recent years they've expanded so that we include modern music sung in an a cappella format.
Okay.
We do religious music, all sorts of genre now. So it's all done a cappella. So we have maintained our barbershop roots, but not exclusively barbershop anymore.
I understand. Please give us some history on the origin of barbershop music itself.
Well, barbershop music goes back a long, long ways, or the starts of it. In the mid-1800s, they've traced it to songs that the slaves used to sing, and they would add another note or phrase above the melody of the song. So you created a chord, and it progressed along and became more refined in the gay 90s, when it became quite popular to have the actual people singing in barbershops and places like that. And then probably the heyday of barbershop music was in the roaring 20s, when wildlife and carousing was popular. I guess I don't think of barbershoppers that way, but but the style started to fade a little bit in the 30s. So a group of gentlemen got together and formed what was called the SEBSQA, or the Preservation Society, the Society for the Preservation and Encouragement of Barbershop Quartet Singing in America. There's all of these letters, and it was sort of a pun because at that time the government was using everything: CIA, FBI, the Tennessee Valley Authority, the TVA. So it was a pun. They wanted to have the longest acronym.
Well, I think they may have managed that. Barbershop harmony has such a unique sound. What makes it so recognizable?
You're right. It does have a unique sound. Everybody knows that's barbershop. They can't tell you why. But it has to do with, it's called 4-part harmony.
Okay.
And traditionally, as barbershop was developing, they had 3-part harmony when you had men's voices singing together or women's voices singing together. You had the bass and the melody and then a tenor part on top. And what makes the barbershop so interesting is they put the 4th part in there, the baritone, that will sometimes sing below the lead and sometimes above the lead, and it creates that real color in the music. And so that's the 4-part aspects of it. And so you create these chords that are built upon that relationship of the parts.
And barbershop is always 4-part?
Always 4-part,
Always
yes.
4-part?
Always 4-part.
Not 5. Okay. Who are the remaining 3 members of your quartet today?
With me today are Ron Mays, who will be singing the baritone part, Marv Ely, the bass, Bob Lundberg, who will be the tenor, and I will be singing the lead portion.
All right. We will now enjoy listening to Hello, Mary Lou.
Pass me by one summer day, flash those big brown eyes my way, and oh, I wanted you forevermore. Now, baby, I'm not one that gets around, swear my feet stuck to the ground, and though I never did meet you before, I said, hello, Mary Lou, goodbye, heart. Goodbye, heart. I said, sweet Mary Lou, I'm so in love with you. I'm in love with Mary Lou, Mary Lou, that we'd never part. So hello, Mary Lou, goodbye, heart, goodbye, heart. Saw your lips, I heard your voice. Believe me, I just had no choice. What horses could make me stay away? Thought about a moonlit night, arms around you, good and tight. That's all I need to see for me to stay. Hey, hey, hello, Mary Lou, goodbye, heart. Goodbye, heart. I said, sweet Mary Lou, I'm so in love with you. I'm in love with Mary Lou, Mary Lou. We never part, so hello, Mary Lou. Goodbye, heart, goodbye, heart. Hello, Mary Lou. I'm in love with you, yes. Hello, Mary Lou. Goodbye.
Jerry, that was just beautiful.
Well, thank you.
Beautiful, such mellow voices. I love it. Within the 50-member chorus, you probably have a number of quartets then.
It varies a little bit from year to year how many quartets that we have. Right now, I would say we have 2 organized quartets that sing together on a regular basis. But within the chorus, we have what are called pickup quartets, where guys that have one time or other have been in the quartet or have sung quartet, and we mix and match and put together a pickup quartet. And that's what was here today.
Really?
The 4 of us, this is the first time that we've sung together in public. The first time we actually sang together as a quartet was last night.
That is hard to believe. I have to say that's very hard to believe. But I can see why you would like to keep this flexible in setting up your quartets. It has to make it fun and fresh. And don't you always get a new sound with new combinations of different
It's amazing
voices,
on that point with the new sound that sometimes you have 4 guys that really have beautiful voices and you put them together and it just doesn't work. And then another, you put 4 other voices together and you get this, how they meld together as a distinct, very pretty sound together. So it changes. And another aspect of having pickup quartets is, for this program originally, another fellow was supposed to be singing lead. And he had voice problems, and so I took over singing lead, and so that's what helps when you have substitutes or spare parts on the kit.
So it helps if you know more than one part.
It does.
Yes.
It does. I was going to sing tenor the first time, and then I shifted from tenor over to lead.
Well, it was beautiful. I have heard the Lincoln Continental sing, and I have to say I was so impressed with the quality of the music. It's just beautiful. What is the singing background of a typical member of your chorus?
Yeah, a typical member, I think the thing that is the common thread through every member is that they love to sing and perform. That's what brings people to the Continentals. That a lot of times that you get people my age that they're outside of a church choir, they don't have the opportunity to sing and perform. And so if singing is a passion, it gives you an outlet to perform, and that's the main thing. But to sing with the Continentals, we're always looking for good singers. That good singers make for a good end product. But to be a member, you don't have to read music. You have to have a good ear so that you can hear pitch and match pitch is the main thing that's important to be a barbershop singer, because you are singing by your ear sound if you're blending with the other 3 voices that you're with. That if the lead drops the pitch a little bit, the other guys have to adjust to follow him down. You have to be a really good ear singer.
And if someone wants to check into being a member, where can they look?
The best place to look is probably go to the on the website, lincolncontinentals.org has all of our information. And barber shoppers are always out trying to recruit new members. The first thing they ask somebody, can you sing?
Understandably. Well, I know Valentine's Day is a very special holiday for your group, and we will now listen to Heart of My Heart.
Heart of my heart, I love you. Life would be naught without you. Light of my life, my darling, I love you. I love you. I can forget you never. From you I ne'er can sever. Say you'll be mine forever. I love you.
Jerry, do you usually have costumes when you perform in quartets?
Depends on where we are performing. It would be the answer to that. That singing Valentine's will definitely be dressed as all in similar type of attire, probably with some red on it for Valentine's Day. Like today, the guys were coming from work, so not necessarily in matched uniforms. there's a society, Barbershop Society has a contest, and so sometimes there you will have costumes based on the songs that they are singing. It's gotten away from the traditional straw hat and striped shirts.
Like the Music Man?
Yes, that's not the image that like to have necessarily portrayed, because people put you in a little box and confine you for your music that way.
Well, sure. So you do sing, you give singing Valentines, and if our viewers are interested in scheduling a singing Valentine, how might they do this?
Again, the place to go with all of the information, because I'll leave something out, is to go to our website, lincolncontinentals.org, and you can find the information for singing Valentines on that site.
And your group has done this for a number of years.
They've done it longer than I've been a member. I've been a member of the Lincoln Continentals for, I think it's going to be my 12th year with the Lincoln Continentals. I also sing in Nebraska City, but it's been going on a long time.
I'm thinking you must have a couple of fun stories to share about the delivery of some of these singing Valentines.
Doing it that length of time, you have a lot of stories that could come to your mind. I'll start out with one that was strange circumstances for singing it. It was the first Valentine in the morning, and that day we were having a blizzard. We were supposed to sing all day, but they got called off by noon. It was snowing so bad. But we went to our first home at 8:30 in the morning, ring the doorbell. The husband had gotten this Valentine for his wife, and she comes to the door in her bathrobe and hair up in curlers, and she did not want to see a barbershop quartet standing in front of her door.
I can identify.
So we sang standing on the porch in the snow and in the wind, and sang through the screen door to her. So that was on the not so pleasant of experience.
But memorable.
But memorable. And the other one that really pops in my mind happened last year, that his father, his daughter had cerebral palsy, and she was in one of the nursing homes here in town. And she just loved music. And so he hired us to sing Valentine for her. And we went in and sang with her, and held her hand and cried with her, and it was just one that I won't forget. It meant so much to him. He was crying and she was crying, we were crying, and very, very emotional, and something that will stick with me.
Well, and that's what Valentine's Day is all about.
That's
that heartwarming. We might just mention that I know you and a number of your Lincoln Continentals had an opportunity to sing at an occasion for a gentleman that's a very near, dear, and friend to all of us at Live and Learn. Can you just briefly mention that?
Yes, last week they had a memorial service for Don Gill. And Don was the MC for the Barbershoppers annual show for 36 years. And he was the only honorary member of the Continentals.
Really?
Don and Donna always came to our awards banquets and shows, and invited them to so many things. And I was fortunate enough to get Donna hired a quartet to sing a Valentine for Don. And I was fortunate enough to be on that. And I made the mistake of going in to say, we have a rose along, and I handed it to Donna, and Donna says, no, that's for Don.
Oh, how wonderful. Well, wonderful couple, wonderful gentlemen. So thank you for telling us about that. Jerry, it's obvious that this is such a fun endeavor for you, and I thank you for being here today, and I thank Marv and Bob and Ron for joining us.
Well, thank you for inviting us. It's just
you are very welcome. Do you have just a really quick parting message?
Quick parting message just to the guys.
Okay.
Guys, you may not understand Valentine's, but the gals really dig it. That if you want to get any brownie points, get a singing Valentine.
I agree. I second that. Thank you again. And we will now finish up with My Irish Rose, as I say Happy Valentine's Day and month to all of our viewers. Enjoy.
My wild Irish rose, the sweetest flower that grows. You may search everywhere, but none can compare with my wild Irish rose, Irish rose. My wild Irish rose, the dearest flower that grows. And someday for my sake she may let me take the bloom from my wild Irish rose. My rose, the bloom from my wild Irish rose.
Today we're going to meet a woman who can show you the ropes because she knows her ropes. I'm Leda Powell Drake, and we're going to be talking with Joan Wells. Joan Wells is the female world's champion trick roper and inducted into the Hall of Fame, the Cowgirl and Cowboy Hall of Fame, and she lives in Lincoln, Nebraska.
That's right.
Oh, listen, you're a big star around the whole country, and we're proud to have you from here. Now, how did you get started? Why trick roping as opposed to when you're a child, holding your little dolly with the carriage? Now, how did that all happen, Joan Wells?
Well, I'm from a rural community. I grew up in Seward, Nebraska, and my father's cousin was a rodeo performer, and he rode rough stock, and he learned some trick roping. And he would show me tricks when he came to visit the family. Now, he trucked a lot of show cattle through the United States, and when he'd come through on some of his trips, he'd stop and show me some trick roping. And he bought my first ropes for me and showed
Now,
me.
how old were you then?
4. I was 4 years old.
4 years old. And do you remember the first trick that he ever showed you? It
Yeah.
had to be something real simple.
It was called a flat loop. You spin the loop in front of you, parallel to the ground.
And so, starting at age 4, then you had a rope. And so, how often did you practice or just make a decision? I really like this.
Well, as soon as I learned that first trick, then I
You were hooked?
had the desire. They call it the roping fever. I had the desire to want to learn more tricks. As he showed me what he could do, well, I want to learn that one.
And you've continued it,
Right.
Which is really amazing, which is really extraordinary. We're going to take a look back to kind of give you an idea of how dramatic that this woman, Joan Wells, really is and what she's capable of doing. So let's take her to, what was the area where this was shot?
It was in Hereford, Texas.
In Hereford, Texas.
That's Joan Wells, trick rope artist. 1989 inductee into the Cowgirl Hall of Fame and Western Heritage Center. Joan's from Nebraska. A cousin who was a rodeo performer got her started on trick roping. She was performing at the age of 4. Got together a routine that she could travel with around the age of 10 and started doing rodeos when she was in junior high.
I did 2 styles of roping, which originated in Mexico with a Mexican charro roper and then was introduced to the Wild West shows, and Will Rogers made trick roping famous actually here in the United States. The original rope that trick ropers use is no longer available. I do what we call rope spinning, which are the cotton rope spinning tricks, multiple spins, 2, 3 ropes. Usually in the routine I'll come out horseback spinning a rope, usually a large loop.
We got Joan Wells. She's the Women's World Champion trick roper, and also a 1989 honoree to the National Cowgirl Hall of Fame. Now she'll be attempting a big loop all the way around that yellow horse she's riding. She got that big loop going. For Joan's last trick, she's going to be doing the Texas skip for you. One big loop, jumping back and forth through that thing. It's a lot harder than that loop, let me tell you. Texas skipping for you, Joan Wells.
Oh, wasn't it wonderful to see Joan in action? And we appreciate the work of Ron Long from Long Shot Video Productions right here in Lincoln for assembling that. Now, when you think about Joan Wells learning to be a trick roper at age 4 in Lincoln, Nebraska, there had to be some influences, culturally, socially, that in addition to your cousin coming in and helping you to teach you, what was going on that you said, I'd like to do this?
Well, that was in the late 50s with the cowboy westerns, and Roy Rogers, Gene Autry, Hopalong Cassidy, Lone Ranger.
Lone Ranger.
And of course I always wanted a horse, of course. And,
Did you ever get a horse?
Yes, I had actually 2 horses that I used for trick roping.
Right here in Lincoln?
Well, in Seward.
In Seward, yeah, okay.
Then later I did have one outside of Lincoln here.
So you just kind of, when you saw this on television, probably, and you say, that stirred your emotions.
Well, you're a little kid, you know, you're influenced by television and what you see. And of course, my cousin, and we had a farm that we farmed and outside of Seward. And, you know, you just, you grow up with people around you that just like Western things.
It's great that those people reached out, you know, because usually with a little girl, they say, oh, she's going to be serious, well, she's going to play with her dolls and so forth. But that they reached out, and obviously you were a willing learner. You wanted to know more about this. And the fact that you're still at it, which is, I just love that she's still doing. We always say that the ideal kind of job is to go with your passion, what you really care about. And she's one who has certainly done that to be in the Cowboy Hall of Fame. Okay, now, in order to do the trick roping as well as you do, how much do you have to practice?
Well, the world champion trick roper that was my mentor also, as well as my cousin, he recommended you practice an hour a day. And it's very physical. It's like doing aerobics, you know. And you can do it in 2 sections. You can practice a half hour and then come back later and practice another half hour.
Well, can you do this in the house?
I have a rec room downstairs where I practice, and then I go outside.
Okay, are you doing physical things with your body, or are you doing them with the ropes? Because you wouldn't have much room in the interior in order to get these ropes really out there.
All the things that require larger loops, I practice outside. But
oh, good, because I was thinking all the lamps and the tables downstairs
that's true. They're all
wouldn't be lasting very long.
That's true.
Okay, she brought along some ropes today. She's going to show us the ropes. As to, I didn't know there was a great deal of difference in ropes, so perhaps you can explain some of these to us.
Well, this first one here is what we call a Texas skip rope. And it's about 25 feet long. They no longer make this rope. This is a rope that Will Rogers used back then. And in the late 60s is when I purchased the last 100 foot of this to make ropes up. And Junior Askew, the world champion trick roper, made this rope up for me. It has a brass Honda, so as you open the loop, it stays round. It doesn't fold up on you. Notice on the end there's a knot. That rope is spinning so fast, I don't want that rope to slide out of my hand. So I can keep it, hold on to it better with a knot on the end.
Well, why don't they make this rope anymore?
Well, it was German cast machinery. Samson Spot Cord is what it was called. Cordage Works in Boston, Massachusetts. And one of the parts of the machinery broke down. And now they make a reproduction of it. They braid a nylon filler down the middle. It doesn't make it as tight of a braid as this should be, but I stiffen it up by different methods that I use. And
so you're still using this even though they don't make
rope,
these, because they don't make them like they used to.
This is my better set that I've set aside just for better, nicer stages, this particular rope here. And it has a brass Honda. The little loop in the end of the rope we call a Honda. This has what we call a catch knot. Now if you watch the calf ropers, team ropers, they all have this catch knot in them. That gives me additional weight besides the brass insert here to keep that weight that I need to keep the loop open and round.
Now, what does a rope like this weigh? I mean, it doesn't seem...
I don't know, a few ounces, about a pound maybe.
Oh, okay. Now that one looks to me exactly the same.
Now, it's shorter. It's 15-foot rope. With this rope, we do a lot of our tricks. With this one particular rope, you can do the vertical and flat spins. Notice it has what we call a rough out burner. These little pieces in the Honda is called a burner. And
wait, now the Honda is called the burner.
The loop in the end of the rope is called a Honda.
A Honda, okay.
And that's Spanish. But this little leather piece is called a burner. Now a calf roper wants a slick one, but a trick roper wants a rough out one to slow the rope down and to hold the loop in the position they want it to. Again, this has a knot on the end. Now notice how this is braided back.
Yeah.
Junior Askew, the world champion trick roper, made up this rope. And he braided this back into the rope so that the edge of the rope would not hang up on, it wouldn't hang up on the edge of the rope.
There's
so,
more to this than meets
there's
the
nobody
eye.
that can do that anymore. That's
okay.
art that you just don't see.
This
This
one
is what we call a Mexican maguey rope. And Vicente Oropesa was the first Mexican to rope on the Buffalo Bill Wild West show in North Platte, Nebraska. He would have used a rope like this. It's made of hemp from a tequila plant in old Mexico.
Woo.
But anyway, you'll notice there's a swivel on one end. So as you get the loop out and you're standing on horseback and you jump through the loop, this will keep the rope from catching. And
there's more to this than I realized.
This is probably about 60, 70 feet long, because when you do a horse catch, you want to feed the rope out.
Okay, she was the featured performer out at the Nebraska Horse Expo at the Lancaster County Event Center, and so we got a little footage from that. Nebraska's Cowboys, Legends, and Legacies is very special. It's the Nebraska History Museum, and Joan Wells is one of the featured stars who is there, and one of the few women who is there. We hope that you will take advantage of our free museum right here in Lincoln, and to come over and see it. It's going to be there through 2015, I think you said, Joan. Now, all these clothing, you have the costumes and the clothing. Where do you get that?
Well, most of the outfits that I used are custom made. Years ago, there were tailors in Fort Worth, Texas, that did all my my shirts and pants for me, and they were tailor made because of the type of thing we do. We have to have longer tails, the sleeves have to be the right length, and so they were all tailored.
Well, in this exhibit now, it shows the 2 floors on the History Museum, which is located at 15th and P Street right here in Lincoln, and it's free. And so you see a lot, you guys doing their things also, but for a woman to be featured is very, very special. So we encourage you to get over to the Nebraska History Museum, 15th and P Street. It's free, it's open to everybody, and see this wonderful exhibit on cowboys and featuring Joan Wells. And the thing is, she is available to the Nebraska Humanities Council too, as a presenter and speaker, to come to your organization and perhaps give a little talk, and you can get some more information about a trick roping.
Yes, I have a program that's available through Nebraska Arts Council, the touring program. Also the humanities. I talk about trick roping on the Wild West shows and a little bit about Buffalo Bill's Wild West show.
The women's world champion trick roper right here in Lincoln, Nebraska. We're very proud of you, and you keep on roping, girl. Okay. And Live and Learn will be right after, we'll be back right after this message.
Welcome back to Live and Learn. My name is Tom White, and my guest today is Nicole Jacobs. Nicole is a board-certified music therapist. She's an adjunct faculty member at both Concordia University and Bryant College. She lived and worked in Lincoln for 11 years. Welcome, Nicole, and thanks for joining us here today.
Thanks for having me.
First of all, can you tell us what a music therapist does?
Sure. Well, a music therapist is a healthcare professional, and we use music therapy to target functional goals. So music therapy is the use of various music interventions to target goals such as cognitive functioning, motor skills, and psychosocial types of goals.
Okay, and what type of training and education is necessary?
Sure, there's a big misconception that in order to be a music therapist, you either don't need any training or that you need to have a PhD. And the entry-level requirement is that you must have a minimum of a bachelor's degree in music therapy. So we actually have specific degree programs that are just in music therapy. I'm finishing my master's degree, but we have training all the way through the PhD level.
Okay, and so can you tell me, where do music therapists work?
Sure. Well, because we work with all ages, music therapists work in many different settings. We work in hospitals, in every unit. We work in school settings, public and private. We work in preschools and daycares. Many of my patients, I actually work with them in their home, such as early intervention children who are under the age of 5, so they're not in school yet, and I will see them in their home. A lot of my patients are older adults, and so I see them either in assisted or independent living facilities or a skilled nursing facility, or a lot of my hospice patients, I will actually see them in their own home.
So maybe some of the people that have grandchildren out there, what kind of therapy is involved in working with children?
The children that I work with, a lot of them will have autism or Down syndrome. They may have some physical deficits such as hypotonia, which is low muscle tone. And so what we do with those children really depends on what their diagnosis is, but it's still going to be working on either speech and language or cognition or motor skills.
And how can music therapy help with issues related to aging?
Sure. Well, music therapy is helpful for both healthy older adults as well as adults that have some kind of neurological pathology such as dementia or Parkinson's or MS, or someone who has had an injury such as a stroke. And so, for example, if someone has had a stroke, they may have difficulty speaking again. And so we can actually use some music interventions to help improve their speech so that they're able to communicate again.
Okay, and so can you share some specific examples and of how music therapy has made a difference in treatment?
Sure. Well, I've worked with some Parkinson's patients who were having difficulty walking, and we have an intervention that targets specifically walking. Walking is biologically rhythmical. It has its own rhythm to it, and oftentimes when you have something like Parkinson's, that disrupts that rhythm. And so what we can do is we can use a metronome and have them walk to the metronome, and that actually will improve their gait so that they're able to have a better functional level for walking and getting around.
It wouldn't be the same as marching, but it would be the same idea.
Yeah, it's walking to the beat.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
And
yep.
So you know, I've kind of pretty much stuck to my script, but we've run through so many of these questions so quickly, and I don't want to go too far off, but I did want to ask if some of the stories or anecdotes that you have about, because I know music therapy is used, like you said, it's used with memory care.
Yeah.
Can you give me a specific story or anecdote about helping with memory care?
Sure. A lot of my own experience has been working with dementia patients. Mm-hmm. And a great example that I like to share is I was working with an older adult. She was actually a hospice patient. Her primary diagnosis was dementia, and she was living in a skilled nursing facility at the time. She was up in the memory unit, so she was up in a locked unit. And I was actually seeing her in the evenings at that time. And that was very intentional because that was when she needed me the most. She tended to be the most confused in the evening hours, which is really common for dementia patients. So I had gone there to see her one evening, and when I walked into her room, she was non-ambulatory, so she was actually sitting in her wheelchair, but she was trying to get up. And of course, she could have easily fallen out of her chair, and she may have gotten injured and needed to go to the hospital. I happened to get there at just the right time, and I sat down with her and talked with her. And one of the parts, or one of the jobs of a music therapist is to assess their patient. And so I quickly assessed her and realized that she believed that she was in her car. She was not oriented to reality, which is very common to dementia patients. And so, and she was trying to get out of her car. She thought that she had arrived at her destination and it was time to get out. And so I realized after many years of experience that it wasn't best to try to convince her that she was not in her car. I probably wasn't going to be very effective doing that. She was very anxious about being in her car, and so my goal actually for her was to decrease her anxiety. And so what we did was we sang some of her very familiar songs that she knew very well to engage her in reality and to decrease her anxiety. And by the time we were done, she still believed she was in her car, but she was okay being in there and she was not trying to get up. And so I also decreased her fall risk for that time, which was also very important.
That's great. And,
yeah.
And I'm guessing you have other stories about things that have to do with memory care. One of the things that's been fascinating to me about music therapy is how it's worked with patients that have, because of stroke, have lost the power of speech. Do you have an anecdote or a story about that?
Well, a really important concept about music therapy and why it works so well is that music shares neural networks in the brain with other functional areas. So for example, in the case of someone who is having difficulty with speech and language, that part of the brain is being damaged, but we know from lots of research that music shares networks with speech. And so we can actually use interventions such as singing to stimulate that part of the brain for speech and get it to either work better, or in other cases we can help build new connections and help build new areas to take over that functioning area such as speech and language.
That's great. So a favorite song,
yeah,
if they can't speak.
Sure.
Right.
So someone who has had a stroke, if the part of their brain, it's called Broca's area, if that has been damaged by the stroke, those patients have a really difficult time speaking. Either they can't get any words out, or it's really slow, or they will say a word, but it's not a real word. But we will find that they can easily sing a familiar song. And so what we can actually do is take advantage of that ability to still sing, and we can improve that area of the brain, or a lot of times in that case it would be just building a new area in the brain that would take over speaking. One of my most memorable stories about working with a stroke patient was I got contacted to go work with a pastor who had had a stroke. And of course, communication is important to all of us, but when it's your job to speak, that's very devastating. And he had actually been receiving speech therapy for quite some time, but for him, he was not being compliant. He was refusing to go. And because of that, he actually was discharged from speech therapy. Even though he still had a need, he still had a huge deficit in his ability to speak. But he was very receptive to the idea of music therapy. And so I began seeing him. And at first, our goal was to just get him to fill in the blanks of the song. It wasn't even to get him to say or to sing a full line, although it was much easier for him to sing than to speak. And by the end of several months of working on his speech and doing singing and the other interventions we worked on, he was able to not only sing every word in a song, but he could also speak it. And so that's another key to music therapy, is that this patient is not just improving while we're doing the music. We're also seeing that improvement in their functioning transfer outside of music, so that when I'm not with them, they're still enjoying that improvement in functioning.
Does it help if they're listening to music outside of the therapeutic environment, outside of the music therapy sessions? That also gives them plenty of time to continue to work on the...
That's a really good question. Like other therapies, such as speech therapy and physical therapy, usually music therapy patient will also have home exercises to do, so that they're not just receiving the therapy when I'm there, but they may have some exercises that I give them to do. So maybe they are supposed to practice that song that we're working on, and I'll have a very specific protocol. Maybe they're supposed to say all the words to that song, and then I want them to practice singing it slowly. I might give them a metronome to help provide some structure to that. and then maybe I'll have them try to say it again after they sang it, and I'll have them keep track. And so a music therapist takes data on their patients, but I've had some patients that are high enough functioning that they can take data too, and then that's very valuable information for me to look at when I visit them, and I can see how they've improved throughout the week since I've seen them.
Well, one of the other things, and we don't have a lot of time left, but I wanted to ask about hospice.
Sure. I've been working in hospice for a very long time, and a lot of my patients in hospice are older adults, and so for them, my goal is always to target the same goal as the other part of that hospice team. And so if the nurse's goal for that patient is to prevent falls, then that's what we will work on. If that patient is having breakthrough pain, then my job would be to help decrease that breakthrough pain, or to help improve the effects of the medicine that they're on for pain. A recent story that I can share is I was actually referred to a patient who was young. She was just a little bit older than me, and she had a young child. And this patient, she was at the very end stages of cancer. It was a very rare form of cancer. And our goal was actually to create a legacy video. And so the daughter enjoyed writing poetry, and the mother loved to sing. And so our project was going to be that the daughter would write some lyrics, the mother would come up with the melody, and they would perform that together while I helped support and record that. And we were going to add some pictures and some artwork to that. And then they would both have had that experience, that positive experience at the end, to hold on to, as well as an actual end product that the daughter could keep forever. And so we're able to do some really unique things like that are beneficial not just to the patient, but to the rest of their family.
That's wonderful. So just in closing, what would, in a few lines, how would you say music therapy can continue to be used at a broader level? Is there anything you use more in more situations?
Sure. Well, I think the important thing to remember is that music therapy is not just for children. It's not for just adults. It's not just for autism. It's for many, many different patients. And the biggest concern is that in Nebraska, we don't have a lot of music therapists. And a lot of our schools and hospitals don't employ music therapists, and so accessing music therapy, if you know that you need it, can be really difficult. And so I encourage you that if you think you can benefit from music therapy, or if you know someone who can, that you try to seek out a music therapist near you and find out if you're appropriate for services.
Well, thank you so much, Nicole. If you'd like any further information and learn more about music therapy, please visit the website www.musictherapy.org. And my guest has been Nicole Jacobs. She's a board-certified music therapist. And my name is Tom White, and this is Live and Learn. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Chris Beckenbaugh. My guest today is Dr. Tracy Bender with Interim Healthcare and Coddington Physical Therapy. Welcome, Tracy.
Thank you, Chris.
And Tracy, you are an occupational therapist. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. I'm an occupational therapist, and an occupational therapist can work in many different settings: the school system, outpatient, inpatient, hospitals, home care, and we work with injury, illness, disease processes to help rehabilitate people and get them back to independence.
And how might that be different than a physical therapist?
It's similar in some aspects and different in others. Occupational therapy focuses a little bit more on activities of daily living, upper extremity strength and fine motor coordination, and any occupation that's important to somebody.
Okay. And you work with people from infants to seniors?
Yes, throughout the lifespan.
Okay, great. How did you know that you wanted to be an occupational therapist?
Actually, Chris, my mother had a brain injury when I was in high school, and I was introduced to many different types of therapy, and that's how I got interested in the field.
And then how long does it take to become an occupational therapist?
At this time, you can enter the field of occupational therapy with a master's degree or a doctorate degree. I have a doctorate degree, so a minimum of probably 5.5, 6 years.
Okay, and that's after college, right?
Yes.
That's after a 4-year.
No, that actually includes, if you know what you want to do from the beginning and you are on the right path, you could do the undergraduate degree for 4 years and then do a master's program in about 2.5 or a doctorate in about 3.5 additional.
Wonderful. Okay. So you chose to get that doctorate.
I did.
Congratulations.
Yes, thank you.
How long have you been providing treatment to patients?
About 7 years now.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you provide treatment for all kinds of patients in different situations, but you have chosen to specialize in a particular area of treatment and a medical condition. What is that?
The treatment that I've specialized in is called lymphedema.
Okay. All right. Lymphedema. For those of us at home, how is that spelled? Let's start with that.
Okay. Lymphedema.
Okay, so it's lymph, like the lymphatic system,
yes,
right? And then edema, which means?
Swelling.
Swelling.
Yes.
So we have swelling of the lymphatic system.
Essentially, yes.
Okay. Well, we'll start with the basics, and we have some pictures to show. What is lymphedema?
Lymphedema is a protein-rich swelling, and it can be anywhere in the body. Typically, people see that in the arms or the legs. That's the most common place, but it really can be anywhere. And it's an interruption in the lymphatic system, and it can be caused by many different things.
Okay. So it's an interruption, a swelling that's caused, this protein that's part of our circulatory system or not?
Something like that, yes.
Okay.
Okay, if we're talking about the lymphatic system, most people are familiar with veins and arteries and how they run kind of like a road map throughout the body. So the lymphatic system is very similar. It's made up of vessels, which most people are familiar with the lymph nodes, and that is part of the system. But lymph vessels, actually, they cover the body like a road map, the same as veins and arteries, but they're smaller, and they sit a little bit closer to the skin. And then they work with the lymph nodes, which act like filters.
Okay.
So the fluid that circulates through that entire system is lymphatic fluid, and it's a white, milky substance. It's made up of protein, water, and white blood cells. And when that system is interrupted in any way, whether it be lymph nodes removed or not working, or those vessels being interrupted by a traumatic injury or a surgery, those kinds of things, that fluid has to have a place to go. And so that swelling is actually that fluid building up in the affected area.
Okay. So our body, just like our circulatory system, your lymphatic system allows fluid to flow in one direction and then it flows another direction.
Yes.
And there's valves that control that.
Some of the vessels have valves. Most of them rely on passive diffusion, so they kind of rely on the flow of the veins and the arteries to push the fluid. So if you have difficulties with circulation in your veins and arteries, you may also have issues with the circulation in your lymphatic system.
Okay. So we've had some kind of traumatic injury or a surgery or something that has interrupted the flow in the lymphatic system. Mm-hmm. Okay, so how would we see that evidence then from the outside?
Well, typically it presents as swelling. There are 4 stages of lymphedema. The first stage is called a latent phase, where somebody may feel just a heaviness to a limb or someplace in the body, but you may not visually see the swelling. And that's actually the first stage of lymphedema. And then stages 1, 2, and 3 are variations of swelling from there.
Okay. Okay. And what would be the most extreme? We have a picture on right now of someone who's got pretty significant swelling.
The most extreme is stage 3, and that's also known as elephantitis. Some people are familiar with that term.
Okay.
And that's actually, it is judged by the size of the swelling, but it's also judged by some changes that can occur in the skin.
Okay, and what might those be?
Well, fibrotic tissue can develop, so it's kind of like a scar tissue. As that fluid builds up in the layers of the tissue, it becomes hard to the touch. And we can have skin changes such as hyperkeratosis, which is actually a hardening of the skin. It takes on more of the quality of a fingernail. Yes, and then there are also things called papillomas. They look like sort of like a raised mole or a wart, and they actually are just pockets of skin that have developed to hold additional fluid.
Okay. So your body's trying to make room for all of this,
yes,
and it's trying to protect itself from what it sees maybe as an invader?
Yes.
All right. How does this get started? How does this condition develop?
It can be any number of things, and it can be a combination of things. Cancer treatment is something very common, so there are a lot of people who have experienced lymphedema after breast cancer surgery, things like that. Radiation actually can damage the lymphatic vessels, and then if you have issues with the lymph node, either it's not working or there's cancer in it and it's been removed. Surgeries, you know, it's not a direct cause of a surgery. Everybody's body responds differently to a surgery. So when you have surgery or a deep laceration, those vessels are actually cut through. And sometimes your body can find a new network to send that fluid, and other times it doesn't do that. And so it's unique to everybody's body. Mm-hmm. Past injuries could have an effect. Fractures, crush injuries, those kinds of things. Any circulation changes, venous stasis, ulcers, chronic venous insufficiency, those kinds of things. If you've had wounds and that scar tissue develops, that can affect those vessels in the levels of the skin. Also, fat tissue, as your fat cells grow and expand, they can actually kind of suffocate the lymphatic vessels.
Okay, so once this process starts, this downward spiral, then are we able to resolve the problem? Can you ever go back to not having lymphedema again?
The first two stages, the latent stage and stage 1 lymphedema, are actually considered reversible stages with proper treatment, and I have seen that be reversed to where somebody does not need treatment after a period of time. Every stage of lymphedema is treatable, but there are cases where that treatment and self-management must go on for the rest of your lifespan.
Okay, so it never really goes away.
Once you have an issue with the lymphatic system, it's typically there, but it's manageable. It's similar to diabetes. So if you learn the proper ways to manage it, and it is very important to manage it. Swelling isn't normal and it shouldn't be there. So it is important, if you have swelling, to have that addressed, because you're at risk for a serious infection of the skin cells called cellulitis if it's not managed.
Okay, so we may have a viewer at home who says, you know, I've noticed that one of my arms is a little larger than the other, or it's a little painful to the touch. What should be their first steps?
The first step that you want to take with any type of edema is to have a diagnosis from a doctor. You want to go in and find out the source and the cause of the swelling, and then figure out what your treatment options are from there. Lymphedema is one of the most underdiagnosed conditions in the United States, and so it's not always easy to diagnose, and not everybody knows how to diagnose it. So it's important to seek more information if you think that might be the issue for you.
Okay.
There are a lot of people who have swelling that comes and goes, and they try to manage it at home just with elevation, and that's not always the trick. I mean, if you have swelling, you want to know why it's there and figure out how to make that something that you can manage.
Okay, okay. Well, so this can be painful, right? Is that my understanding?
Lymphedema typically is not painful, but there are people that do complain of pain. Typically, the most painful situations are when people have wounds in correlation with the lymphedema. But people do often tell me that they have a heavy feeling or a tight sensation, and sometimes a burning sensation.
Well, Tracy, this has been great starting information. Unfortunately, we have just about run out of time.
Okay.
So I'm wondering if we can come back and visit again about maybe possible treatment then.
Absolutely.
Going forward.
I would love to do that. Thank you, Chris.
Well, thank you for the information that you've shared with us today.
Sure.
And once again, this has been Live and Learn. And remember, it's never too late to live and learn.